those of you who don't know me, my name is Kristen Osterhout. I am the Education and Training Coordinator for the Alzheimer's Disease Caregiver Support Initiative. And I do just have a couple of housekeeping notes. So I want to let you know today's presentation is being recorded. So if you want to share it with a friend or a family member or someone, let me know. I'd be happy to pass that along to you. And it should be on our website in the next week or so. I do also want to let you know that you are in a listen only mode, so I cannot see or hear you. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type them into the chat box. And I'm here with Jane Marie Schaeffer from Herzog Law Firm, and she is going to be talking about financial planning. But before she gets into her presentation, I just want to talk a little bit about our organization for those of you who don't know us. Our goal is to improve the quality of life of caregivers and people living with Alzheimer's disease and or dementia. We are supported by a grant from the New York State Department of Health to provide these services for caregivers that are living in Clinton, Franklin, Essex, Warren, Washington, and Hamilton counties. And we offer care consultations, which are meetings with the caregiver and families to talk about how we can help, how other community organizations can help, to provide some education on topics related to Alzheimer's and dementia. And that's usually where people start. They start with care consultations with our care navigators. We also offer support groups, which are happening virtually at this time, but we're hoping to start offering some in-person options as well soon. Memory cafes, which are social events for caregivers and their loved ones living with dementia. They're really fun. Last week, I delivered all the supplies to everyone who signed up, and we made these cute candle holders, and we have little electronic tea lights. So they're really fun. We also do musical events. We offer respite. So that would be for you to get a little bit of a break. It's not meant to replace long-term care, but just for you to get a break so you can go get your hair done or go to your own appointments. And we pay for that service. And then lastly, something called Project Lifesaver, which is a bracelet that your loved one would wear if they were at risk for wandering. And we partner with the sheriff's departments in all of the counties that we cover to help do that program, and also to locate your loved one quickly if they were to wander. All of our programs are totally free. They're open to the public. There's no income eligibility in order to enroll. You just have to call us up and say that you're a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. So that is me and my program, and my contact information is on the screen there too. So if you want to get in touch with me, feel free to give me a call. It's the best way to get in touch with me, or email me. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jane Marie to talk more about financial planning.
Hi, thank you. And as you can see, I may have a co-presenter with me.
That is okay.
Okay.
Cats are always welcome.
Yes,
It's
that's
one of
right.
the joys of working from home these days,
That's right? He missed me, so he wants to be in the presentation. All right, so my name is Jane Marie Schaeffer, and I'm a partner at the Herzog Law Firm. And I work with individuals like yourselves. I work with families to do elder law planning and estate planning. And this is the second part. I know you had a prior presentation on advanced directives. So that focused on the types of legal documents that you would need to have someone help take care of things for you. And so today I'm going to focus a little bit more on the types of planning you can do in terms of how you pay for your care and how you can protect your assets. So this is just kind of a review from the last time, but these are estate planning documents that everyone should have. That's a healthcare proxy and living will, a disposition of remains appointment, durable power of attorney, and a will. So I'm not going to focus on these today, but if you have any questions, please feel free to either ask me a question at the end or email me after the presentation. So today, I'm talking about long-term care planning, which is really kind of that broad umbrella that covers all kinds of things for planning our lives as we age. Where do we want to live? What kind of assistance will we need? And how will we pay for that assistance? So the primary thing that we focus on planning for is, where do people want to live? And no one wants to live in a nursing home. 87% of adults 65 and over want to stay in their current home and community as they age. So as we talk about planning, it's going to be with a focus on trying to stay home and get services at home. Of course, we help people plan if they have to go to a nursing home, but I consider that really a last resort. So these are the questions that frame our discussion when you're thinking about where you're going to live as you age. So where do you want to live? It's not just a home versus a nursing home. It's like, where is your home going to be? Is it your current home where you live now? Or, as many older people realize, they may want to downsize, or maybe their home is on 2 levels, so they want to downsize to 1 level. So that's all part of the thought process. Some of it is that you may not even want to own anymore. You may rather rent, so you don't have to worry about the upkeep. So, home is wherever you are. So we want to make sure that you're in the appropriate place, that you can receive care. Next question to think about is, who is going to provide the care for you? So of course, initially and primarily, it's going to be family caregivers. Generally it's going to be your spouse, or it could be your children. But there will come a time where, there may be more needs than what your family can provide. Children work, adult children work, and they have other responsibilities, so they may not be able to be there, especially during the day. So it's sometimes a combination of different things, a family caregiver plus a paid caregiver to fill in the gaps. So knowing that, we need to know how you're going to pay for your care. And I'll go through some of the costs of care in a minute, and to understand what, free or government resources are available for you, that you can make use of those, in addition to whatever types of care that you're going to have to pay for. So you also have to look at your total picture of what financial resources are available, what income and assets you have, and what is available to use to pay for your care. So these are different long-term care costs. It's good to kind of have an idea of this, so you know what to expect. And this is showing the full range from home care to nursing home care. So if you have to go out to a home health agency to hire home health aides, it's generally going to be about $30 per hour. Costs are going to vary, depending on which agency you use. Some people decide to not use an agency and just to hire someone themselves off the books. That's going to be a little bit cheaper. You do run some risks of hiring someone off the books, in terms of payroll taxes or workers' comp. And kind of a common theme with home care is, even though that's what we like to try and provide to people, is just the shortage right now of home healthcare workers. Whatever we do, whether you're paying privately or whether we're going to use Medicaid or some other program, it's really hard to find people to work for you because of the wages that they're getting paid. So that's kind of a common theme. So anywhere you can find help, it doesn't even have to be someone who's skilled or trained. For example, there's a Medicaid program where you could use friends or neighbors to provide care to you. But it is really hard to find someone, especially at the rates that they're paying, because you can make more money working at, McDonald's or Amazon than you would taking care of someone at home. So I don't have an answer for this, but this is just an issue that you have to expect when you are trying to find people to work for you at home. I'll talk next briefly about assisted living, because sometimes that's a nice option for someone who doesn't want to go into a nursing home. However, as you can see, assisted living is not cheap. It could start off as low as $3,000 per month. It can go up to $8,000 per month, $10,000 per month, are some of the memory care facilities. You'll see that Medicaid does not have that many assisted living facilities. There are a few. So if you're looking into that, you want to know what those are and see if you can get into those. But mostly you're looking at private pay for assisted living. And then the last is the nursing home, which is going to be the most expensive. So that's going to be about $15,000 per month. So that's just, tremendously expensive. So next we're going to look at funding sources for long-term care. So in New York State, Medicaid is the primary payer for long-term care services. And I want to make sure people know that there's nothing wrong with using Medicaid. There's nothing, to hide or be embarrassed about. Frankly, long-term care is so expensive that most people can't afford it, or they would run through all of their assets and income to pay for their care. So Medicaid ends up being what people turn to the most to help pay for their long-term care. There are a few other resources available. Medicare only pays for some limited coverage, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. There's long-term care insurance. If you have that, if you're lucky enough to have that, that does pay for your long-term care. However, I find that not many people do have it, maybe due to the high premium cost. There's respite and caregiver support grants like this program that are really wonderful to take advantage of and to get help. And those are funded by state grants. So they're great as long as they're still around and funded. There's the veterans program. They are a great resource if you or your spouse happen to be a veteran. There are some programs and assistance that you can get as a veteran. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those are. So first, I'll just talk about Medicare, because some people do think that Medicare pays for their costs. And I just want to share what it does cover, because it doesn't pay for your ongoing care, either at home or even in a nursing home. What Medicare covers is a short-term stay in a rehab facility. So if you have a hospital stay and then you need some rehab, you will go to a nursing home, and Medicare will cover the first 100 days there. That's a maximum. Sometimes they only cover 20 days or 30 days. But if you still need care after those 100 days are used up, then you have to pay for your care privately or apply for Medicaid. So Medicare was never intended to be the custodial care, the long-term care. It's only for the acute care. So it's a program that is great at providing the rehab, but you can't rely on it, for long-term care going forward. Veterans benefits, I'll just go through a few of these because they may or may not apply to you. But the one that is probably most useful to folks is the aid and attendance program. And to qualify for that, you or your spouse need to be a veteran, and then you must have a need for long-term care. And this doesn't have to relate to your service. It doesn't have to be, some other programs are a service-connected disability. The aid and attendance program is a just normal aging, right? Not associated with your service. And if you qualify for that program, there's income and asset limits. You will receive a stipend every month to pay for your care, and you can use that money to pay for home health aides or to pay for assisted living. And so that's a nice little supplement, and sometimes that really makes all the difference between paying for care and staying at home or living in assisted living and not. So if you do happen to have questions about the veterans program, these are some places that you can go to find out about it, or you can always ask me some questions about it at the end. So Medicaid, as I said, because that's the program that provides the majority of care, we're going to spend the most time talking about Medicaid today. So there's Medicaid that most people are familiar with, Medicaid covering nursing homes. Today, we are mainly talking about community Medicaid. So Community Medicaid is the program that pays for you to receive care in your home. It's going to provide home care, it provides adult daycare, and it, as I said, covers some assisted living facilities. So really the goal is to kind of keep you in the community and receive care in the community. To be eligible for Medicaid, so you have to be over 65 or have a disability, and you also have to meet financial eligibility requirements. So these are some of the types of community Medicaid programs. I won't really go into depth about these, but this is just enough to know that there's enough programs that you can probably find one to suit your needs. There are some subtle differences between these programs in terms of the types of assistance that you need. So for example, with Alzheimer's or dementia related disabilities, the waiver programs are generally better because of the way they assess how much care you need. They're going to provide oversight. But there's also managed long-term care. There's programs, for example, the Consumer Directed Assistance Program, where you can find your own home health aides rather than trying to find someone through an agency. So after you qualify for Medicaid, your next piece is figuring out which program that's going to be most suitable for you and how many hours of care you need. And as I said, we're really looking at the whole picture, how much care can your family provide? Do you have a neighbor who can check on you at night? So it's kind of fitting this whole puzzle together to make sure that you do have care. So first, however, you have to qualify financially. So there are income and asset limits for qualifying for Medicaid. And if you're an individual, the income limit is $904 per month, and the asset limit is $15,900. So when you look at this, don't be alarmed initially by looking at these limits and saying, I'm not going to qualify, because there's many ways to qualify. There are many assets that are exempt that don't count. And then there's some other ways that we can transfer assets out of your name to have you qualify for Medicaid. Now, if you're married, when you apply for Medicaid, they look at your spouse's income and assets as well as your own. However, the amount that your spouse is allowed to have is a little bit higher than what you're allowed to have. So most of the times, your spouse's income, it's not going to count for or disqualify you, I should say. And the assets are $74,820. That's the asset limit for your spouse. So before we talk about some planning things, let's look at what the exempt assets are when you apply for Medicaid. So when we're talking about community Medicaid, your house is going to be exempt. So that's a big difference. The house is exempt because you're still living there, right? So as long as you and your spouse or your spouse are still living in the home, it's going to be exempt. Now with nursing home, or if you move out of your home into assisted living or nursing home, and you don't have a spouse still living at home, now Medicaid can put a lien against your house. So the house is a little bit tricky. You can maybe apply for Medicaid with the house still in your own name, but you would still want to try and protect it against any future Medicaid liens if you're not able to live there anymore. So we'll talk about how you can transfer your house to protect it. Some other exempt assets are a burial plot, a prepaid burial contract. That's something where you go set up at a funeral home, you prepay for your final arrangements. Separately, you can also have a life insurance policy with a face value of up to $1,500, and your car is going to be exempt. Another large asset that is exempt are retirement accounts in periodic payment status. So in English, what that means is your IRA account or your 401k, your 403b, those accounts are exempt. So if you have a $100,000 IRA, you're still going to qualify for Medicaid, even though it's more than $15,000. However, you have to be taking payments from the IRA. So Medicaid calls it periodic payments. The IRS calls it required minimum distributions. You may be familiar with that term because that's what RMDs are, what you have to take when you turn age 72. So they'll exempt that $100,000, but the amount you have to take out every year, usually it may be about $4,000, $5,000, that's going to count as your income. So that goes into the income calculation. However, when you pass away, everything that's left in that IRA passes to your children or your beneficiaries without Medicaid being able to touch it. So that is a really great benefit and a big exemption that is available that helps a lot of people qualify for Medicaid. So what happens if your income or your assets are too high? So we're going to be talking about trust today. There's two types of trusts. It gets a little complicated because there's one trust you can use to protect your assets, and there's a different trust that you can use to protect your income. But the good thing is that you can put money or income in a trust and qualify for Medicaid. So you would look at what your assets are, see what you have that's over that allowable limit, and then you're going to look at ways to transfer those excess resources. There are also some exempt transfers of assets that you can utilize. They don't apply to everyone, but if you have a situation that fits that exemption, you might as well take advantage of it. So one exemption is if you have a disabled child, you are able to transfer assets to that disabled child, and that's an exempt transfer. So that's one way to qualify for Medicaid. Another way is to transfer assets to a caregiver child. So you can do this a couple of different ways. You know, if your child moves into your home with you and helps take care of you, after 2 years, you could transfer the house to that child without any penalties associated with that. Or even if your child doesn't live with you, if they come and they are spending time to take care of you, you could pay them. So you could enter into a caregiver agreement. And money that you pay your child is going to be, that's an exempt transfer for Medicaid purposes. So those are some of the exemptions that are available. However, what most people do is they try and put their excess assets into a trust to protect it. So there are two types of trusts. There's revocable trusts and irrevocable trusts. And it's only the irrevocable trusts that qualify to protect your assets for Medicaid purposes. So an irrevocable trust, it's different than a revocable trust because you are not able to be the trustee and you can't control the trust. So that you are trading off some control over the trust in exchange for the protection of the assets that are inside the trust. So as we go through how the trust is structured, you can see how it works. And usually most people find that the loss of control isn't as bad as it sounds, and it is worth it to protect their assets. So first thing in these irrevocable trusts, these are the terms that you have to meet to qualify for Medicaid. So you can't be your own trustee of the trust, and it can't be your spouse. So you have to name your children or some other relative as the trustee. And again, that's usually not a problem for most families. If it gives you any comfort, you can always change the trustees in the future if you change your mind. So a lot of people put their house into the trust. And again, that's not really a large change in your day-to-day living, because when you put your house into the trust, you reserve a life estate in the house. So that means you have the right to live there for the rest of your life. It can't be sold without your consent. So the only change really to you is that the legal title of the home changes to the name of the trust. Day to day, you're still living there and paying the bills and nothing changes. The benefit of doing this is that you do avoid that potential Medicaid lien upon your death or your spouse's death. If you put other assets into the trust, for example, bank accounts or stocks or bonds or mutual funds, you give up the right to access the principal. You can only receive the income from the money that's put into the trust. So again, that's something that you give up the right to do that. However, you are protecting those assets that you put in, and they're helping you qualify for Medicaid. So that's generally a win-win for you. People will ask is, what if I do put money into the trust, but I am short of money in the future and I have an expense that I need to pay? In that case, there's something called a partial revocation of trust that you can do. It's a document that needs to be signed by you and all of the beneficiaries of the trust. And when you all sign that, you're allowed to take out whatever dollar amount you want to take out from the trust. Whatever you take out is no longer protected, presumably because you're going to take that out, however, and spend it on something. So that's not a problem. And everything that you leave in the trust that you don't take out, that is going to stay protected. So that is a good option to have if you need to do that. Lastly, upon your death, the trust assets go directly to your beneficiaries. So you do have the benefit of avoiding probate. So that's just an added benefit. Whatever money or properties in the trust can be distributed by your trustee without having to wait to go to court to go through the probate process. So looking at the trust, what do you fund your irrevocable trust with? So it kind of depends on whether you need Medicaid right away or whether it's something that you think you're going to need in the future. So if you need to apply for Medicaid right away, yeah, you have to put everything in the trust to make sure you get down to that $15,000 limit. If you're, however, not anticipating needing Medicaid right away, and you're looking at planning for the future, you may not put everything in the trust right away, right? You may put your house in the trust, but you're probably going to keep out things like your bank accounts and money that you're still spending, and only put in the trust money that you're not spending, like savings and investment accounts. So each situation is different, right? But today we're really talking about community Medicaid. So if I needed Medicaid, like I just met with clients who really needed help right away for the gentleman's wife. So when they have too much money in their own name, so we're going to set up a trust. Now they'll put everything in the trust, and then by the end of September, they'll be able to apply for Medicaid. So that's how trusts kind of work when you need to apply for Medicaid right away. Now, related to that, that sounds fantastic, right? So I can put money into a trust and I can apply for Medicaid after everything is in the trust the following month. That's good news, right? That's the current rule. The bad news is that that law is changing. You may be familiar with the 5-year look-back period for nursing homes, and that means that you have to have set up your trust 5 years before the time that you need Medicaid. So starting next year, there's going to be a 2.5 year, which is a 30-month look-back period for community Medicaid. So it won't be as easy to apply for community Medicaid last minute. You can still apply for community Medicaid and have a trust. However, the money or the assets have to be in the trust for at least 2.5 years before you would be eligible to apply for community Medicaid. So that is a big change. So two things to say about that. And one is, if you think that you may be needing assistance soon in the next few months, I would suggest applying before the end of the year, so you could fall under the current rules with no look back period. And the other thing is, if you're thinking that you may need care in the future, why not start a trust and start that 2.5 year period going? So it is going to be a big change, and undoubtedly there are going to be people who fall in the middle, who may need care, but they haven't set up a trust in enough time. So there's some things that we can do about that. One thing that we do right now for our clients who are applying for nursing homes, if they haven't made it through the 5-year period, is to do a gift and a promissory note. Basically, the result of that is that you can save about half of your assets by gifting them into the trust, and then you use the other half of your assets to pay for your care. So we'll have to see how this plays out over the next year or so as this new law is implemented, because it's going to be, tricky, but that may be an option that's available to you. Another option that you can do, at least if it's just between spouses, is you can transfer money between spouses, so that the one who's applying for Medicaid doesn't have any money in their name. And then the spouse, the one you've transferred all the money to, they can do a spousal refusal. And that's a way to quickly get Medicaid. It's just a form that you sign that says, I'm the spouse, but I need all this money to pay for my own living care, my own expenses, and I can't use this money to pay for my spouse's long-term care. And that means, what that means, as awful as that sounds, it's really just something that you sign on paper, and then your spouse gets Medicaid. Now the burden kind of shifts over to the county, and the county is going to review the case and see if they want to try and ask you to make a bigger contribution. It doesn't happen that often, but that is a risk out there. So that's kind of the risk that you take when you do the spousal refusal. The other things are those exempt transfers that I already mentioned for the disabled child or the caregiver child. So now I'm going to switch into planning with excess income. So up to now, we've been talking about a trust to protect your excess assets. This trust is a private trust that you set up yourself. You pick your own trustee. It's usually your child, and it's managed by your child. You can qualify for Medicaid with excess income. You have to use a different kind of trust for the excess income. That trust is called a pooled supplemental needs trust. So these trusts, the pooled trusts, they're run by nonprofit organizations. And generally they run these trusts for hundreds, if not thousands of individuals who are on Medicaid and have what we call a spend down. So they're very used to managing these trusts. They know the Medicaid rules, so it's handled very professionally. So the way it works is, first, when you apply for Medicaid, they calculate what your spend down is. So they're going to take your total monthly income. They're going to subtract the Medicaid income limit, which is currently that $904. And the balance is called a spend down. So in this example, you can see this lady has a $1,000 per month spend down. So to qualify for Medicaid, she would put that $1,000 into a pooled trust every month, but she doesn't lose it, right? She can still use the money in the trust to pay for her living expenses. So she keeps $900 in her own checking account. She has $1,000 in the trust that she can use to pay her bills. And basically the pooled trust can pay any of your living expenses. If you own a home, it can pay your taxes and your repairs and your insurance. If you rent, it can pay your rent and your utilities. It pays for groceries, it pays for transportation. So really, you get to keep use of all of your income and have Medicaid pay for the home health aides. So it really is a worthwhile endeavor to use the pooled trust. Initially, it's a little bit off-putting for some clients because you have to figure out what bills the trust will pay and what bills you will pay, and the bookkeeping, so to speak, gets a little bit tricky. But the people we work with at NYSERC Pooled Trust are really helpful, help you figure out what bills you can have paid, what ways to automate things to make it as easy as possible. So after a month or two, people are usually clicking right along, and it's not as hard as they think it is. The other thing a pooled trust can pay for is additional hours for home health aides. So you can't use, so let's say the Medicaid gives you only 40 hours a week for whatever reason, which is fine. And you have Medicaid pay for those 40 hours, but you may need an extra help on the weekend, maybe because your family is going away. So you can pay privately for those extra hours. And you could use the pool trust to be the source to pay for those extra hours privately. So it's pretty flexible. Pool trust can really pay for anything other than what Medicaid is paying for. So I'm just kind of go over kind of everything that I just talked about today, and then we'll go into a question and answer session. So really some key takeaways are that there's a community Medicaid program that lets you stay in your home and receive care. So that's really good news for most people. It's still not, every time I tell people about this, it's still something that's not that well known. So it's just great to remember that. And, you know, I met with clients today who didn't really know about that. They came in to talk to me about placing his wife in a nursing home. And after we went through community Medicaid, and by the time they left, he said, I just feel like a huge weight has been taken off my shoulders, because it's like, I know my wife would rather stay at home as long as she can. So that's really the great thing about community Medicaid. Other things to remember are if your assets or your income are too high, you can use different types of trust to qualify for Medicaid. That's really not a problem, other than the change in the look back period. So this says starting October 1st, 2020. And remember, I said it's really starting next year. That October 1st date, as you can see, it was during COVID. So the beginning date of that got pushed back. So as of now, it's pushed back to January 1st. There's a possibility it may get pushed back once again, but it's not going away, let's put it that way. So it's here, that new rule is here. It's just been delayed because of the emergency state that we were under for COVID. So as with everything, planning in advance is the best. I'd rather plan now and be in a position where I've had the trust around for several years before I need care than to not have done it. All right. So this is my contact information, or the general contact information for the firm. You can give us a call or you can email us if you have questions after today. Of course, right now, if you want to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer your questions and to hang out here for a while.
Thank you so much, Jane Marie, for that wonderful presentation. And, you know, I always learn a lot from or get good reminders of things that I have known but forget about. So it's always good to hear other people talk about planning for future care and aging in place. Does anyone have any questions?
I'll do a little selfless promotion here. We have a radio show every Saturday. So if you want to listen and just learn more about this and other topics, it's a good show. It's a call-in show, but we do talk about all these types of issues every Saturday morning.
Great. That's really good to know. And I love that I see you have a podcast too, which I listen to podcasts all the time.
Yeah, that's
especially
right.
when I'm driving, which is great. If you can't tune in Saturday at 8, you can listen to it another time.
That's right. That's great.
What office do you work out of? There's one in Albany and Saratoga, is that correct?
Yes, there's also a new one in Clifton Park.
Oh, okay, great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, pretty new. So about a year old. So Albany, Clifton Park, and Saratoga.
Okay.
All of us travel to any of those offices.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Albany is the main office, but you know, I'm probably in Saratoga once a week or so. So.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really good to know.
And then for clients, I know this is, you know, more upstate. Even if you don't want to drive to Saratoga, we'll do Zooms or we'll do phone calls. So that works also.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best silver linings from COVID-19. We've started to do more virtually, and I know a lot of places have done the same. So it's great that we're staying connected and you don't have to travel. Like if you live in Plattsburgh, you might not want to drive down to Saratoga, but
That's right. That's right. But I feel like a lot of clients, myself included, have gotten more comfortable with Zoom. So
yes, we've had to adapt, which is
we've
good.
had- that's right.
Well, if anyone gets off here and thinks of a question, I would be happy to get you in touch with Jane Marie after our presentation today. And I want to thank you again, Jane Marie, for doing this for us. It's been a pleasure working with you. I hope we can collaborate again in the future, because I think this is a really important topic for caregivers to think about early on.
Great, thank you. I do enjoy presenting this and hope I, brought some useful information to everyone.
Absolutely, you definitely did. And I do want to let people know who are watching that next week I do not have a presentation due to the holiday, it's Labor Day, but we will be having another one on Monday, the 13th at 5 p.m. And we're going to be talking about health and hygiene for caregivers. So I hope to see you all then. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.